topic of hand gestures in Jewish law, hand motions. We did a lot of them. Here's the final one we'll discuss. Placing hands on the head of children on Shabbat, Leil Shabbat, when you bless them. It's another movement with one's hands that one does. Now, that's not a strict law. Like if you don't do it, you make you just give them a blessing, or even if you don't give them a blessing, it's fine. It just enhances the experience. The question is, why do you think we do that? There's a few sources for putting hands on heads. There's two sources for it in the Torah. There's the source for putting a hand on the head of a human and a hand on the head of an animal. So anybody can think of what I'm...
It's the Kohen Gadol's confession on Yom Kippur.
Yeah, so in general, there's a mitzvah. When you bring a sacrifice, you're supposed to put your hand on the head of the animal. And also it says when Moshe was giving over the leadership to Yeshua, it says he put his hand on his head and he gave him a blessing. It says he gave him some of his splendor. So those behaviors can be explained in both of these ways. So the putting, let's say when you bring an animal as a sacrifice because you did some sort of sin, it could be understood that you put your hands on the head of the animal almost for a mystical purpose, to kind of to transmit your sins to the animal. And then once the sin is in the animal, then you sacrifice the animal to God and you're done with your sins. That's how some people understand that ritual. But another way to understand it is not mystical, like the other ways we explain it, which is like to help you focus or to say, this is my sacrifice from God to God. Like you're noting it. You're like making mention, like you're making an act. You're doing an act that notifies that this is your sacrifice. But also with Yeshua and Moshe. Moshe put his hands on Yeshua's head. Why do you do that? Some people says he gave him some of his splendor, gave him some of his blessing, some of his prophecy, some of his energy. Or can we understood that he put his hand on Yeshua's head for this in order to signify something? Signify to Yeshua that he's the new leader, to signify to Moshe he's giving over the leadership, or to the nation. The nation saw him doing that. They saw that he was giving over leadership to Yeshua. So you could take all these two ways. One's mystical, kind of like a transfer of energy or sins, or you could go another direction, like a symbolic gesture that can serve multiple purposes. And it's not the custom of putting hands on our kids' heads on Leil Shabbat can go either way. I was going to share as a personal story. I don't know when it actually started, though, like when people started doing that. I don't know. But I just share a personal story. When I first really started getting blessed that way was when I moved to Israel after high school. I went to yeshiva. And my grandmother and grandfather, my Saba and Safta, were living in not far from my yeshiva. And I would go there, like I would walk there or take a bus there, and they would bless me. My grandfather would bless me all the time. And on Leil Shabbat, especially, he would give me the blessing, put his hand on my head. And I just imagine him, ask why we make the blessing. He used to bless me all the time, and he was really afraid because I grew up kind of like in a secular culture. I think maybe he had that intention, I don't know, that he was trying to bless me, he wanted to protect me from any negative influences. And I really believe that due to his blessings and his brachas that he gave me, I was able to kind of grow in Torah and perhaps become a rabbi, grow in Torah and become the rabbinic Jew that I am. So don't ever underestimate brachas, and if putting hands on the head help mystically or even symbolically, try to take up that custom. It's powerful. Yeah.